Welcome to Caleb Can't Read. I'm Jordan Rabel.
I'm Caleb Terrence.
You know, you've been asking for a segue. I think I might have one for this author.
Okay.
Tell me about your balls.
My balls? I joke around about having a tiny penis. I have legitimately small balls. I feel like they're a little undersized. Why?
Oh, it'll come up. Mine have got kind of like a double chin going on.
A double chin to your balls? I mean, a double chin on your balls is definitely going to be better than that, like, weird, once you get that, like, padding on your pelvis, fat level, you know what I mean? Like, your pubic bone is now cushiony.
Is it not supposed to be? Leonard Bukowski was born sometime in October of 1860 in Germany.
Smooth.
This is the best I got. He had moved to Cleveland, Ohio, sometime in the 1880s, where he met a woman named Emily Krauss, a fellow immigrant from the German state of Prussia, specifically from a town called Danzig. Once they married, they settled down in Pasadena, California, where Leonard became a successful carpenter. They had 4 children: Charles in 1888, Emma in 1890, Eleanor in 1893, Heinrich in 1895, and Benjamin in 1903. Now Heinrich, the 4th of the 5 children, would favor his more American name, Henry, and Henry learned to be a carpenter by his father's hand. Later, they would often immigrate to Los Angeles on business. Henry Bukowski would later enlist in the American Army during World War I, probably in his late teens. After Germany's defeat in 1918, Henry was stationed in Andernach, Germany as an active sergeant. It was here that he met Katharina Israel, sister to one of his close friends and a fellow soldier. Henry and Katharina started a secret love affair before Katharina became pregnant, where they waited to marry until 1 month before their child was born.
It's kind of hard to keep it secret when, you know,
it's water weight.
Like
it's water weight.
You know.
It's just water weight.
Okay.
Shh, it's a secret. A lot of oversized turtlenecks she's been wearing. Their child, born August 16th, 1920 in Andernach, and the subject of today's episode, Heinrich Karl Bukowski. Now, the Bukowski family moved around Germany a little bit after little Henry was born. This was mostly because the older Henry was now a contractor, and he was making a killing in post-war Germany, rebuilding from all the rubble the war had caused. However, this only worked so well before Germany tried to fix the issues of their depression with the hyperinflation of their economy, a decision which will, of course...
That went well, right?
Yeah, it doesn't spiral them into another major war or conflict or anything like that.
Okay,
Actually,
cool.
They've been inflating since then, and they've been doing great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, with Heinrich Sr. unable to make a living any longer, he moved himself, his wife, and son to Baltimore, Maryland on April 23rd, 1923. When little Henry was about 10 years old in 1930, his family moved to L.A., specifically the neighborhood of Mid-City. Now, at this point, Heinrich Jr. was already going by his chosen American name. He couldn't change Heinrich to Henry like his dad did. That would be too confusing. Instead, he changed his middle name of Karl to Charles and went by his middle name, where the whole world would later know him as Charles Bukowski.
Oh, fuck me.
Do you know this guy?
Don't worry about it. Proceed,
I'm a little curious.
No.
No?
Just keep going.
All right. Well, you can explain that later.
Yeah.
However, Charles's thick German accent as a child led to some quick teasing by the other kids. Hell, when they found out his real name was Heinrich, they wouldn't stop calling him Heine.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any, like... They tried with Jordan and it didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't really have it. Caleb doesn't have much to go with.
No, not really.
No.
Like, not a last name either. Like, Terrence, more like... Ooh, Clarence! Like...
I mean, maybe it would have been better if it would have been easier, because I guess, like, if they're like, Caleb, more like, fuck it, beat him up.
Yeah. Like, same. Yeah, when they were just like, Jordan Rabel, more like Jordan Rainbow, you gay? And I'm like, no. Well, I'm gonna beat you up anyway. Shit. Oh, man. And his home life...
Just name your kids something easy to fuck with about, and it'll be a protective measure. They'll just get verbal abuse.
I've always heard the opposite, where people are like, now you got to run through the names so that they don't, like, you can't name a kid Richard, otherwise they just start calling him Dick. And it's like, man, if that's the best that they could do, let them have it. Yeah. Name all your children Richard, And his home life wasn't much better either. Heinrich Sr. was very abusive. And Bukowski's mom would just let it happen. Very much a you should have listened to your father type of mom. And Heinrich was actively looking for any excuse to beat his kid. Every Saturday, he would force the young Charles Bukowski to mow the lawn one way and then the other way. And then he would have him trim the edges. Then he'd have to go out with a literal pair of scissors to cut any stragglers. And every time he tried, his father would still manage to find a few stray hairs sticking out of the lawn.
Yeah, this is called discipline, Jordan.
It's called an excuse.
How do you think I train people? I don't...
This is how you ought to do it.
Yeah.
And every time he tried, his father would manage to still find a few stray hairs. And of course, if Charles wasn't perfect at it, that's a beating. Heinrich's favorite method of abuse was spanking Charles' bare ass with a razor strop, those leather belts you use for sharpening your straight razor.
Do they hurt more than just like a regular ass belt?
Than a belt? I don't know.
I mean,
well, a strop's got more width to it.
Okay.
So I would assume you just get more ass.
Maybe it's just like I don't wear belts that I beat child ass with.
Well,
maybe it's like a hygiene thing.
To be fair, once you first get
my knife with.
Well, once you first get a belt, it's a little bit hard to like kind of roll around. Like it's not formed yet, At least when you're hitting a child with it, it kind of like wears it out like a good pair of shoes,
Okay. Yeah, so I'm guessing this kind of like worn sharpening belt would get a good rap.
Yeah, maybe it keeps his razor very sharp if he like beats a child with it first and then he puts up and he's like, God damn, that's got a good sheen.
It's good and oily. God.
Gonna be a lot of child abuse.
You gotta be more careful, man. Like you work in a fucking office, and like, don't you have to be more careful about like what you say and shit? Like, I'm a fucking arborist. I can yell about spanking children all I want. Like, it's not gonna make any difference. I get neck tattoos. It don't matter. But you,
as long as I'm not talking about patients, man, they don't care.
Okay, all right.
Everyone there thinks I'm like a legit alcoholic. They don't get millennial.
You are a legit alcoholic.
No. Yes, but they don't get like millennial
Just
humor.
because you're not like literally waking up and slamming whiskey throughout the day does not mean you're not an alcoholic.
Well, they don't get millennial humor. So they're always just like, I was coughing like I usually do. And they were just like, Jordan, you dying over there? And I was like, I wish. And they were all like very concerned. And I was like, no, that's funny. Like, so they really believe like I'm on the, like, that I'm like just on the edge of like just smoking crack and fucking slamming bottles of whiskey every day. Like,
do you think, I don't know if they think that, maybe they actually think that you want to die. Because you're saying that you do.
I mean, who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
See, it's good humor. So Charles Bukowski claimed that these regular beatings happened from the time he was 6 until he was about 11 years old, usually in the ballpark of 3 times a day.
Jesus.
And he details what he remembers to be his final beating, where he says that he was just so fucking done with life at this point that when his dad started whipping him, he saw that there was no reaction out of Charles, so then he just started whipping him harder. By the end of the whipping, his dad was tired and worn out, and Charles just looked bored, no emotion whatsoever. In fact, when his dad was walking out of the bathroom, Charles just calls out to him like, hey. When his dad turns around, he's like, give me a couple more if it'll make you feel any better.
Jesus, yeah.
And his dad just looked at him and slammed the door. Charles Bukowski was a hardened kid by 11.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Ooh, we're going to start a cycle. And his dad was an asshole in other ways too, not just this. He, of course, hit his wife every so often as well.
Oh, I thought it was just, I thought it would just be his kids.
Nobody graduates to kids without going through the prerequisite of wife beatings. You know this.
Do you think that one comes first? Do you think it's wife or children first?
Wife.
Same timesies? Or is it just like a constant?
No, it's usually beforehand, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, got to keep her in the relationship. So, yeah, on a couple occasions throughout his numerous odd jobs, when Heinrich was a milkman, he'd take Charles with him as he made his route. Well, one time he brought him to this lady's house that owed milk money, and what do you know? Hey, Charles, stay here in the truck while I go collect money from this nice lady. Sure enough, he'd come out tucking his shirt into his pants and with his hair all tousled. Charles said that the second time he saw that lady was when he came home from school one day, and the lady was sitting in the living room with his mom and dad. And Charles' mom was crying, and the dad's just like, what? I love you both. Ultimately, the dad chose his family over his slam piece.
Oh, well.
So he's got a good heart.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. As Bukowski would later say in his thinly veiled autobiography, Ham on Rye, his school life wasn't much of a saving grace from what he had to deal with at home. He had an amount of acne that one would call unfortunate. So much so that he actually became a bit of a case study with the local doctors. This affliction would... What?
How... If you're fucking, like, teenager suffering from acne and you go in to get help and they're like, okay, we don't know what to do, but goddamn, we need to document this.
Yeah.
That would hurt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it was actually extremely painful in a physical sense, too.
Oh, fuck.
You know what doctors do if they don't know what to do, right? Just throwing shit at the wall, see what sticks, you know? He learned a lot about medical instruments. The affliction would eventually...
Did you learn? Did you...
He wrote about it.
Oh, okay. Well, fucking read me some of that shit.
I'm getting into it.
Okay, go.
This affliction would eventually end up causing a lot of scarring on his face and body. So you can imagine how horribly he was treated at school. And although he was very much an outcast, he did manage to find friends, other outcasts. So he would get picked on for hanging out with these kids, and one day he had had enough. He found out that kicking the shit out of the other kids, whether win or lose, was a good way of being left the fuck alone. Mm-hmm. He soon got a reputation for being a troublemaker, but of course the other outcasts who were constantly getting bullied saw him as a worthy ally. These were what a lot of parents would say is the wrong crowd. Kids that would say shit like, quote, "You ever jerked off in a raw egg? You don't have to die to go to heaven."
Nice.
That's an actual quote from one of them in his book. Oh my God, man. Reading about his like prepubescent like childhood was just, there's a lot of talk about semen.
What else do you talk about?
Well, right?
What do we talk about now? For fuck's sake.
This is why I researched the guy. I was like, I do like semen. When he was in his early teens, Charles' friend, the son of a local alcoholic surgeon, introduced him to booze. This was the escape Charles Bukowski was looking for. Tensions at home and school had already become worse since the Great Depression hit, and soon Charles Bukowski was a full-fledged alcoholic by the time he was 13. According to him, the only reason he'd graduated junior high in the first place was because the school wanted him gone. During the graduation ceremony, when his name was called, no one clapped, not even his parents, because his parents didn't come. Bukowski's interest in reading came when he was in high school. His only desire in life, like most, was to get laid. But he didn't really mess with the girls his own age. He was constantly after MILFs. Mm-hmm. You start off with this episode going, oh no. But the more I read about him, the more you're just like, yeah, you know what? It's not all bad.
I just didn't really feel like going over him at this particular time, but that's okay.
As he would later write, quote, "You boys can keep your virgins. Give me hot old women in high heels with asses that forgot to get old."
They don't get hips until they're older. They don't.
All right, don't defend Charles Bukowski.
There's no. You guys don't understand. Okay.
And this never worked for him, but
late 20s minimum.
Oh, that's a MILF? Well, God, yeah. Okay.
No. It's just the acceptable minimum,
I guess.
All right.
And this never worked for him, but one of these undertakings was for the local librarian. He wanted to look like an intellectual to her, so he started looking through the classics. He wouldn't just grab the books off the shelf and check them out, though. He was going for the long con. He'd sit and read things like D.H. Lawrence and Hemingway in full view of the librarian. And at first he was just faking it, but then he found himself actually getting lost in these stories. I thought, Jesus Christ, these are fucking good. So he started writing short stories and poems about his own life as catharsis, partly to deal with his suicidal thoughts. After graduating from Los Angeles High School in 1939, Bukowski attended the recently reformed Los Angeles City College, taking classes in art and writing, but specifically journalism, because he was told it would be an easy A. Once World War II started between Germany and Poland, people didn't necessarily expect America to join. At this point, it was just a European war. But it didn't stop people from coming up to Bukowski in confidence like, "Hey man, if your side wins, I wouldn't mind joining the Nazis. Oh. Let's see if this idea spreads over here."
Oh.
Remember, he was born in Germany.
Oh, good thing it didn't spread.
Huh?
Nothing.
For more information on this, listen back to our last episode about how terribly that idea went over. Because everyone knew Charles was born in Germany, so they just assumed he supported the Nazis. And problematically, Charles Bukowski would later say that while he didn't like the Nazis, he admired strong leaders. That would include people like Roosevelt, as well as Hitler.
Yeah, that didn't age well.
No.
Yeah.
And Bukowski did admit to hanging out with groups of Nazis in college, but only because they provided booze. In reality, he thought they were dangerous, but mostly just fucking stupid people. Soon after starting his college career, Bukowski got kicked out of his house by his father because he had found and read some of Charles' stories and didn't agree with what they were saying. With this, Bukowski...
You're not allowed to tell anybody I beat you. Look, I'm sorry. This is just part of being abusive. I found out that you told somebody, and now I have to be abusive, all right? Like, that's how this works.
Go cut the lawn.
It's in the rules.
Well, with this, Bukowski moved into the Filipino district of town because it was the cheapest. Quote, I'd heard all the stories about Filipinos, that they liked white girls, blondes in particular, that they carried stilettos, that since they were all the same size, 7 of them would chip in and buy one expensive suit with all the accessories, and they would take turns wearing the suit one night a week.
What the fuck?
George Raft had said...
It's a very specific piece of racism. Like, that's what's getting me. Like,
what's really funny is I remember, like, in the VHS days, they used to have the trailers for other movies in the beginning of the VHS tape, remember?
Yeah.
And there was a Mexican movie about, like, guys getting a vanilla suit.
Where are you going with this?
No, it was a Mexican film. I'm sorry that it came from Mexico with Mexican actors. I didn't make it.
Okay, no.
But no, that was the premise of the movie, and they all basically were sharing this vanilla suit and were getting ladies. I never ended up seeing it, but it looked funny.
Okay.
That's all that I'm going with it, honestly.
All right, cool.
Just a recovered memory?
All right, no, it's fine.
All right. Look,
it's good.
Some of them are good people. Some of them are okay. But,
No.
So continuing his quote, no.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, you could understand how I'd be a bit concerned starting off of that. I mean, you know.
I don't have anything to say about Puerto Ricans. I've heard nothing except just, your food is trash.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So continuing with the quote, George Raft had said somewhere that Filipinos set the style trends. They stood on street corners and swung golden chains around and around. Thin golden chains, 7 or 8 inches long, each man's chain length indicating the length of his penis.
Like, not...
Like, that's...
All right.
I think that's a good style trend.
How did you figure that out? Did someone tell him?
I guess. I mean, George Raft, well, he is writing it, but he said, like, according to some dude named George Raft. George Raft does not sound like a Filipino name, so I would have to assume somebody probably lied to George Raft about it. It's supposed to be like your
dick length? No, diameter.
And although he only lived in the Filipino district a short time, he came away with this experience with nothing but good things to say about Filipinos. Thought they were very nice. Charles Bukowski has a chapter in one of his later works talking about the night he remembers America entering World War II. Talks about it with a very where were you on 9/11 type of dread. He was out drinking with a buddy of his who had signed up at a nearby army base for recruitment, and they were just busy just getting sloshed at the bar. But then the report came in over the bar radio that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, and any recruits were to report to their nearest army base immediately. So Bukowski walks his friend to the bus stop, and afterwards, what?
No, this is great. It's like immediately. Are you sure it was immediately? They weren't like, they weren't like sober up, come here tomorrow. Like,
well, no, I think that they wanted them like, it was just immediate. Like they at least
actually, if everybody's drunk, it's probably better to corral them in, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, but also, yeah, they're not. They're not sleeping in tomorrow. But I mean, honestly, once, we had such a sneak attack like Pearl Harbor, it did kind of work out like 9/11, where afterwards it was a one and done, but everyone was like, oh, what are they planning next? Like, are they going to assassinate the president? And it's like, no, but we didn't know that. So yeah, they probably just wanted all their troops accounted for. I don't blame them.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Even the drunk ones.
So he walks his friend to the bus stop and afterwards went to a penny arcade where he played a few games of like a Rock'em Sock'em Robot type thing with a little Mexican boy. A kid is just excited to play the game for free. Bukowski just kind of stops in the middle of the game and walks off. Once the war started, Because
why do we have this detail?
I thought it was interesting of like where he was. It's odd because like, as we'll find out, he treats everything, like from his beatings to just, I don't know, everything horrible. He treats it all like a fucking joke, but it was the one time that he was just like very somber and realistic, and like just the reality had hit him that the world's not about him. And it was just interesting to see, because it was like, he's not going to fucking sign up and fight and do anything like volunteer wise. He's still just going to be a drunken piece of shit. But like the reality set in with him. I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting chapter to include.
Okay.
Well, once the war started, Bukowski didn't see much point in going to school. Why waste time if you haven't got a future? I mean, who knows when the bombs will drop? So Bukowski moved to New York City for a spell, becoming just a regular blue-collar worker, doing whatever he needed to pay for the barest minimum, booze and rent, while barely pulling enough scratch to do so. Sometimes he'd win a little extra by gambling the horses and betting himself in drinking contests on the street or in dive bars. And while waiting for the end of the world, just in case it never happens, he'd focus on his writing. I mean, hell, worst case scenario, he just live like he is now. Best case scenario, he'll become an author like he always wanted. Eventually, Bukowski moved to Philadelphia, where on July 22nd, 1944, he was arrested by the FBI. Now, granted, he wasn't doing anything necessarily wrong.
Is it because he was German?
Yeah. In fact, there wasn't even any evidence of any wrongdoing, but much less for the FBI to get involved. However, he was an American, born to German parents, born in Germany, and spent his childhood in Germany. So under suspicion of espionage, they picked him up for, quote, suspected draft dodging, but they just wanted an excuse to keep their eyes on him, you know. Now, usually you'd have like 24 hours to come up with evidence in which to charge your detainee, but either Bukowski didn't know this and never asked for a lawyer, or the FBI just didn't care and kept him regardless of anything he said.
Like, usually whenever you deal with anybody in those positions of power, the rules actually don't apply.
Yeah.
And they do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, you know, I've heard the...
Generally?
Like, you need 24 hours to come up with a reason to keep them kind of thing, and it's like, yeah, that always comes up in TV, and while I'm sure it's probably true, I doubt it's used very often.
I fucking hate talking to, like... I hate talking with people that, like, go off about, like, no, you gotta know your rights and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. If you run into a real fucking dickhead, like, keep your mouth shut. They're gonna do whatever the fuck they want.
Your rights don't apply here, sir.
No, dude. That's not how this shit works. Like, senpai. But,
well, either way,
yeah.
He was kept in the now-defunct Moyamensing prison in Philly for 17 days. For the first 15 days, he was treated as a regular prisoner. But the next day, he was given a psychological evaluation. And it seems to me that the people in charge saw that they basically
Careful
had...
there, brother.
Oh.
Mind the foam. Over the nice new recording equipment. Thank you very much. Editing point number 2.
No.
Come on.
And it seems to me that the people in charge saw that they basically had this fit young man who would make a great soldier. So once they're done with the evaluation, they can hopefully find out if he has any anti-American sentiment. If he does, they can keep him in Moyamensing prison and possibly charge him with some sort of treason. But if he passed the psychological evaluation, then that's exactly what's needed to draft him into World War II. It's a win-win for them. But there was a third option that the people in charge didn't consider. Charles Bukowski failed the psychological evaluation altogether.
Pretty fucking hard, I would imagine. Pretty goddamn hard.
Yeah. That meant that he wasn't a traitor. He was just crazy. And he was completely mentally unfit to serve in the U.S. Army. I imagine that, like, one of the guards just, like, hits him with the billy club and he's just like, yeah, do it again. Like, what? Come on, motherfucker.
No, that's too much enthusiasm. But yeah, no, I mean, it seems like the dude is like a bad month or two away from being a yelling guy on the street. So
yeah, honestly,
you know, yelling guy.
Yeah, like I imagine that the two places that you could either find Bukowski is in a bar or at the bus stop. You know. Well, it was around this time that Charles Bukowski, age 24, lost his virginity. We don't know a lot about her. But from Bukowski's own words...
Wait, 24 he lost his virginity?
Yeah.
I thought he was trying to smash MILFs.
He was trying.
Oh, yeah.
Try does not always mean success.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Now, and he wrote about his first experience, so we don't know a lot about her, but from Bukowski's own words, we simply know her as, quote, the 300-pound whore.
Fuck.
He's not a good guy. He's an asshole.
Damn.
According to him, they met at a bar and later took it back to his place. Bukowski and she had a wild, drunken night of lovemaking before he awoke in the morning to find his wallet missing. She wouldn't give up its location, and Charles ordered her to leave amongst a hurl of insults. It wasn't until afterwards that he found his wallet on the side of his bed. And as much of an infamous asshole as Bukowski would become, he later said that he was very ashamed of how he treated her. According to him, she was the first woman who ever liked me. Charles Bukowski got his first work published, a short story called Aftermath of a Lengthy Rejection Slip in 1944 in a magazine called Story. Ironically, it was about how he couldn't get his work approved for publication in any magazine he wrote to. Now, this magazine, Story, while no longer printed today, was a huge deal for Bukowski. This was a literary magazine that had the tendency to really push careers along. They published the early work of Truman Capote, Norman Mailer, even Tennessee Williams. He's the guy who wrote A Streetcar Named Desire and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I figured you kind of like stage plays and whatnot. So
yeah, fucking love musicals. But you know what I mean?
Anyway, Bukowski went from this to having a short story called 20 Tanks from Castledown, published in a small magazine called Portfolio, an intercontinental quarterly. Basically what this was a pet project of a woman named Caress Crosby. She and her husband Harry had started the publishing company Black Sun Press back in 1927 and ended up getting the right to produce the American copies of Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce soon after in 1939, as well as being the main exporter for Ernest Hemingway's works. Getting published by them was a very big deal. At this point in 1946, Harry Crosby had died via a suicide pact he had with a mistress of his, and Caress was not slowing down her work because of it. She was an amazing woman. She invented the bra when she was 19. She did a lot of ghostwriting and erotica, and had a dog named Clitoris. Her Wikipedia page is very fun.
Writers suck.
Oh, I like, but she spelled it Clytoris, clitoris.
Clitoris.
This is my dog, Clitoris. So while Caress Crosby was running the Black Sun Press, she was working on a separate magazine called Portfolio, which was basically her collection of authors that she thought were going to be up-and-coming successes. Albert Camus, Jean-Paul Sartre, and of course, in the spring of 1946, Charles Bukowski. But to Charles, this was not a success. These were 2 short stories over the course of 2 years. And as most writers know, maybe that is success. It is slow going for some people, and that's okay. Shit takes time. Yet Charles saw this as his failure as a writer. This would stop him from writing altogether for the next 10 years. As he traveled the United States in search of work, again scraping by with just enough money for rent and booze. And oftentimes, he'd choose the booze over rent, forcing him to travel from town to town as he'd just pack up his shit and leave in the middle of the night. This was a period that Charles Bukowski would call the 10-year drunk. He was basically on a bender for a fucking decade. And his work was sporadic, basically just picking up shifts that were entry-level until he either got fired or stopped showing up. This was anything from working in a pickle factory to being a mailman for a couple of years. This does kind of sound like you.
Shut up.
The 10-year drunk, just entry-level to entry-level to
Hey, no. I was 10-year drunk, and now I am a successful career person, okay?
I'm sorry, but shouldn't 10-year drunk mean that from at least the age of 21, you're not 31?
Jordan, look, don't act like everyone here didn't start drinking at 15.
All right,
okay,
that's illegal.
Whoa. Okay, well, I was not aware.
Okay, well, we're not in Germany, son. All right? We're France. We're not in some European socialist country.
Oh, right. I wasn't allowed to buy it until 21. That's why I stole it.
You know, those socialist European countries full of their communism. Now, Bukowski would go on to have a great many number of flings. Mostly because he wasn't just a skis, but he was a fucking problem to live with. But one woman he met, a barfly named Jane Cooney Baker, was a specific influence on him. She could drink just as much as Charles, was out of Charles' league, and most importantly, was 10 years his senior. Bukowski was smitten. See?
What?
Nothing. Don't worry.
Fucking look at me like that. Jesus.
And he knew what kind of woman she was, too. She made a living night to night by sleeping with men and getting a free hotel room out of it. And it would usually...
Solid move.
Right? Yeah. That's a roof over my head and a good dickin'.
Yeah.
And it would usually accompany free drinks and a meal. But Bukowski didn't care. This was his perfect woman. And although they stayed in a legit relationship for a little while, it didn't last very long before she moved on because, that's who she was.
I don't really know if he was in a position for, free breakfast and...
he wasn't going to be able to do that, but he wanted to provide all that for her. Like, and hey, if you go fuck somebody else, hey, I mean, let's face it, so am I,
Yeah.
But no, nobody wants to live with Charles Bukowski. I think that was his...
Nobody wants to live with any alcoholic, man. Like, it's not good.
So, I mean, alcoholic is usually a financial issue, but as long as you keep a job and you're fun to be around, I mean, whatever. But...
No. I mean, like, alcoholic. Like, you've been in those houses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grew up
in them with me.
You have made my home an alcoholic house.
Fuck you. No, I have not.
How come the property value just went down? I don't know.
I'm just... Your HOA I sense a disturbance.
We can't have flags out here. Those are his pants on the roof. Just, I don't know, man.
He's drying his clothes. I told him we had a dryer. He just said he was more comfortable.
He might be up there. I don't know, man. Just hang on a moment.
I told him it was cold. He said the wind would be fine.
He said he wanted to fuck everything that moved, so he started staring at the trees on a windy day.
Did not.
Just jerking off.
That is not why I stare at them in the wind, and you know that.
I'm just so taken.
Fuck off.
Well, in 1955, at the age of 34, the excessive drinking caused an ulcer in Bukowski that wouldn't stop bleeding. As a matter of fact, it almost killed him. But while recovering in the hospital...
Holy shit, what age did he make it to?
34.
He made it to 34 without an ulcer?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Well, okay, no, here's the thing. It was enough of a problem that he had to go check it out. I don't doubt that he had multiple issues that he just ignored. Like, if I keep drinking it...
Like, that's what alcohol does. It just makes you put everything on the back burner.
Right, but I mean, he made it to 34 with at least it causing enough pain where he's like, all right, okay, you know what? All right.
Well, I literally can't go fucking 5 feet without having to shit myself. I guess
Well, while he's in the hospital, he had nothing to do. He was bored. So he picked up where he left off with his writing, specifically poetry. Once he was discharged from the hospital, he found himself continuing to write. That same year, he had a mysterious little marriage with a local Texan poet by the name of Barbara Fry. They met as he was trying to publish poetry, and she was the editor for a poetry magazine. She also had 2 vertebrae missing from her neck, so she was in a permanent slouch her entire life. They married in Las Vegas. Not much of her on their relationship is known, but they divorced in 1958, just 3 years after marriage.
Constantly shrimping.
Yeah, she was always, like, I saw the photo of her. She always looked like, when somebody kind of tells you a joke and you kind of crouch your head down and your shoulders go up and you go, oh, oh. Yeah, she just always looked like that in photos,
That's so fucking goofy. That's like the spinal equivalent of missing one of your front teeth. You just always look goofy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not dogging on anyone who has that issue.
We absolutely
Caleb
just did.
Is. Caleb is. But no, I'm just saying that's how she looked in the photos. I don't doubt that there's a nice way to carry yourself, but she always looked like she was just like in the middle of like being told a dick joke, where she just
she looks like just constantly looking like she should have another arm like draping a cape over her face.
I gave you the shovel to dig yourself out.
We just learned about this woman, and this is the only details we have for you. It's just being fucking assholes.
I mean, honestly, yeah, this is pretty much all that we know about her. Like, he doesn't write anything about her. He barely mentions this relationship. Yeah.
Wow, he barely mentioned this and married for 3 years? This is the longest relationship he's had. This is the only relationship he's had, right?
Yeah, well, marriage.
Like, actual fucking relationship.
That is true, actually.
Real.
Yeah, actual relationship, it was this lady. He wanted Jane Cooney Baker, like the barfly lady. But I mean, let's face it, she was a nomad. She's not actually like, he probably was like, yeah, I was dating her. And she was like, I don't date
She's
people.
like, yeah, that's a dude I see sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah, that's all in his head.
But yeah, no.
Well, so they divorced in 1958, 3 years of marriage. It's that same year that the abusive Heinrich Bukowski finally passed away. Not a lot is known about his first wife, Barbara, other than that she later died under mysterious circumstances in India. I couldn't even find out what year she died. I don't fucking know. Like, it seems like, well, yeah, so there's like one source, and then it seems like everyone else picked up that source. And she died, again, who knows what year, but up until like the internet age, if it was printed in a magazine or a newspaper in an obituary, and they just say like, this is what they gave us, she died in under mysterious circumstances, that's it. That's all that we know for the rest of our lives. Like, that's, I wanted to know, I was like, how mysterious and when? Like, but nothing. There's nothing out there. I couldn't find shit. Hey, if anybody finds anything, though, I'm still very curious. Email us at calebcan'tread@gmail.com.
That's a missing white woman. I'm disappointed in you, America. What the hell?
Yeah, but this was this could have been still in the 50s or 60s. She was still a woman. I mean, like, I don't care that bad. Now it's like, yeah, white women, sensationalized since the 90s. But if it was any time before 1990, she was in a permanent slouch. I don't know.
Oh, right. That brought it down a bit.
Yeah, they're just like, a white woman missing. Let's post her picture on the. No.
I gotta say, like, out of all the episodes, this one thus far, if anyone were to listen to it as the first without knowing that we are not being serious.
This should actually
or being sarcastic.
No, this should actually be this should be a great first episode for anyone actually to know exactly how the rest of them are.
No.
I guess she just went off on one of those Robinsonades, you know?
Robinsonades. I'm over it. You're still giggling.
That's good. During their marriage, Charles was happy enough to at least stabilize his drinking. But with the divorce, he became the drink. And this shaped his poetry into something dirty, hurtful, and real. He published his early poems in magazines Gallows and Nomad, the latter of which was a publisher of many beatnik writers such as William S. Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg. But despite being published among his legendary peers, Charles Bukowski again saw the small magazines he was in as a sign of failure, and ultimately went back to the LA post office in 1960 at the age of 40, where he would work as a filing clerk for the next 10 years. It was only a short while with Charles working at the post office that he learned that his old lover, Jane Cooney Baker, had died January 22nd, 1962 from a burst stomach ulcer. As detached as they were in their lives, and as short of a stint as their relationship was, this really ruined Charles. She was everywhere in his early poetry, and the death of Jane, of course, caused Bukowski to drink more. Frances Elizabeth Dean.
I mean, that's not special. I mean, it'd be any excuse, really.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but I don't doubt that he really was infatuated with her. It's hard to say if Charles Bukowski ever loved anyone, but I think that's as close as we can ever call it, is what he felt for her.
Okay.
Frances Elizabeth Dean was born March 19th, 1922, almost 2 years younger than Charles. Although born in California, she grew up on the East Coast, where she married a man by the name of Ray Smith. They had 4 daughters together before she ran away to California to become a poet. She eventually ran in the same circles that Charles Bukowski did, soon enough became his live-in girlfriend. She soon became pregnant with Charles' first and only child. When Charles found out about this, he offered to marry Frances, but she declined. September. Oh, I mean, would you?
I'm just saying, ouch.
Like, I'm gonna love this kid. Hey, you love me too, right? Gonna love this kid.
Especially, like, what age is he at?
So, about, let's see, so
late 30s.
1964 is when the kid was born. So, yeah, he's probably... Oh, no, wait, he's gotta be in his early 40s.
Early 40s?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would hurt more because you're like, fuck, I'm in my early 40s. Like, this is me.
Yeah,
Like, there's no flipping this shit around. This lady's going to change her mind.
I was born in 1920, so yeah, it's like 44.
Ooh, ow.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
On September 7th, 1964, Marina Louise Bukowski was born. Now from here, Charles Bukowski was publishing short bursts of poems in a lot of underground literary magazines. What this reinterested him in was journalism, which he had abandoned once World War II started long ago. Specifically, he started working for underground radical newspaper Open City in 1967, which, although it only lasted a short while until 1969, was at its peak reaching 35,000 subscribers. Bukowski wrote some columns for the newspaper, mostly just articles about his own life. And in short, sporadic episodes, this was fine. People would forget issue to issue that this was the same guy. But when Open City closed its doors in 1969, Bukowski took his collection of articles and had them printed and released that same year by Essex House as a book titled Notes of a Dirty Old Man. And when you read these stories back to back, people got this sense what kind of fucking psycho Charles Bukowski really was. I mean, he didn't do anything too horrible, but this book was an open admission to his problematic drinking, his prostitution habits, and the fact that just like his muse Jane Cooney Baker, he would often couch surf from one spot to another once the people offering a place to stay began to see he was a problem. Oftentimes, these would be people who ran in the same literary circles as him and knew and loved his poetry. They'd be like, would it be okay if the much-loved Charles Bukowski stayed on my couch a few days? Well, of course. Yeah, that would...
4 months later.
You're out of cheese. Fuck you, Charles!
This is why I stayed good on my fucking agreement to get the fuck out of your house.
Yeah, no, we gave you a deadline.
We set a deadline together.
We did.
You ass. And I left a month early.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am again.
Yeah, I'm happy for it.
Okay, cool.
Now, what was of note to Notes of Dirty Old Man was the rampant alcoholism. It's not like drunks didn't get published before this, but it was always taken with the lore of the demon drink.
I mean, wasn't everybody back then a fucking drunk?
Yeah, but this is the whole thing. They
But you had to be piss and blood for somebody to call you an alcoholic back then.
Well, it was often, like, the way that they were doing it, though, was it was often seen as a problem of the author's past, or if it was a current problem, they knew it was an issue. But with Bukowski...
No, I just sip the whiskey. Constantly.
Well, with him, though, not only was he observably a worse drunk than everyone else, but he loved it, and he thought he was better than everyone. Like, that was his issue. And secretly, the FBI also got a handle of Notes of a Dirty Old Man, and they didn't think Bukowski's insanity was nearly as endearing as everyone else did. From that day forward, the FBI had a file on Charles Bukowski again, just like when he was a teenager.
Fucking why?
Because they just thought, they read it, and everyone's like, hey, this guy's a psycho. And FBI read it, and they were like, this guy is a psycho. Like, he might become dangerous. Because back then, a lot of people lied about it. And while nothing actually came of it, you can bet he was happy about that fact if he learned. Like,
it was like, yeah, the FBI has a file on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so did Edward Abbey, if I remember correctly, and he was very pleased with that fact. But he also kind of started, like, accidentally was the reason for a couple of terrorist organizations. So I mean, like, he had more of a reason.
Oh yeah, that was environmentalist dude, right?
Environmentalist dude that likes to litter. Yeah.
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 That was environmentalist and piece of shit Edward Abbey. You can be both. Trust me.
Living proof. From the success of the book, Charles Bukowski skipped around working for different underground publications, whoever wanted him, essentially just saying yes to whoever would ask. But most of the time, he wouldn't actually produce anything for them. He'd be too busy drinking, and they were left to just reprint his old poetry. So they would, like, get him on paper, like, you promise that you're going to deliver stuff. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Okay, here's an advance. And he'd be like, woohoo, you'll never find me. And then just fucking move and just, fucking crash in bars and shit. And then they're like, well, we just told people that we're going to print Charles Bukowski, so just grab some of his old shit and we'll just have to fucking deal.
Look, we printed Charles Bukowski.
Exactly. Well, that's how he saw it, too. He was like, fuck it, you got to print my work, and I got paid.
Well, I got this shit from a napkin. Bam! There you go. I'm out. Charles Bukowski, baby.
Does he think that this piece of used toilet paper is a napkin? In reality, he was
like
just...
a Rorschach.
Isn't it weird when you wipe your ass and you look at it and you just see your parents fighting?
I see a child being spanked.
I don't know who this Rorschach artist is or why he loves seeing my dad hit me so much, but so in reality, he was just using this to bide time and collect checks so he didn't have to work, while in the meantime setting up an independent magazine of his own with his friend Neely Cherry.
Okay, we're not glazing over the concept of an asswipe Rorschach artist, like for therapy.
It's glazed if you ate enough food.
What do you see? Oh, Jesus. What the fuck, man? Like,
oh, God damn it. Okay. All right. Now, Bukowski had come up with the brilliant title for this magazine he had with his friend, Laugh Literally and Man the Fucking Guns. But Neely, over a drawn-out argument, convinced Bukowski that the title had to change. So it was changed to Laugh Literally and Man the Humping Guns.
Oh, much better. Did that...
A bit, I don't know.
That word has always mean the same thing, right? Humping?
I mean, yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there humping guns? Were humping guns a thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
What the fuck is a humping gun?
My grandfather manned a humping gun. You kidding me?
Weird.
Don't look it up. What the fuck, you idiot? No. That's what they mean. Don't look up a humping gun. You're going to get weird search.
Like it's going to get any fucking worse. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Humping gun. What? Not humbling. Humping.
It's a very humbling gun. Don't look at images.
Of course. Oh, okay. It's just a...
So a humping gun is just a chick in a bikini with a gun. I mean...
Yeah, that's apparently... I'm disappointed. Wait, we're going to 4chan. Pause! Okay, great. I'm probably on a fucking list now. Did not think that went through.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ. Oh,
glad
God.
you happened to show me, too. I didn't want to see it.
Never adding gun into a search history with anything sexual again. What in the fuck? Oh.
Hey, it's somebody's kink.
Yeah, that's troubling. Okay, I'm worried.
What's troubling was it was more than like 3 people.
What's more troubling is getting this out of my fucking search history before anybody sees this shit over my shoulder the next time I have to fucking, I don't know. Go.
Now, at the time, the U.S. Post Office was looking for anything that might be classified as obscene. This is, of course, subjective, but it was almost like a revitalization of the Society for the Suppression of Vice, which dissolved 10 years prior in 1950, who we went over to a degree in our James Joyce episodes. However, Laugh Literally and Man the Humping Guns was able to circumvent the watchful eyes of the U.S. Postal Service because Bukowski worked for the U.S. Postal Service. He'd just walk past the main desk and dunk the magazines into the bin, and no one was any the wiser. But the problem with the magazine was that Charles and Neely did not have the eyes of editors. Whereas Charles was handpicked by people who could spot talent, Charles and Neely were asking for just anybody to write in. Turned out, most people are not poets. So Neely and Charles would fix some of the ones that came in so they weren't as bad, and then enter their own poems under fake names so they don't seem like a couple of losers who can only publish a few people. Overall, the magazine was not worth the effort, and Charles and Neely abandoned the project. They had only printed 3 issues over the course of 2 years. To Charles, another failure. And while it's true that this wasn't necessarily a success, one thing it did was catch the attention of a book collector named John Martin. Now, John may not have first learned about Charles' work through Laugh Literally and Man the Humping Guns. Maybe he found him through another underground paper. But either way, John was enamored with Bukowski's work. He saw him as, quote, the new Walt Whitman for some fucking reason. And so John decided to create a company called Black Sparrow Press in 1969, specifically to publish Bukowski's work. John Martin sold his collection of D.H. Lawrence first edition works for $50,000, which gave him the funding to make his dreams come true. And finding Bukowski, it wasn't hard. He wasn't famous and he worked at the fucking post office, so John just hit him up and they had a chat. They sat down and John handed Charles a piece of paper and a pen and asked him how much he needed to survive. Quote, his rent was $35 a month. He had $15 a month child support. He wanted $15 a month for booze and food. He needed another $10 a month for car insurance and gas. When we added it all up, it came to $100. I said, you can really live on $100? I said, yeah. So I said, okay, I'll give you $100 for life if you quit the post office and write full-time for Black Sparrow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at him. An alcoholic lying. Weird.
I didn't consider that.
Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, $15. That's fine. It'll be good. Like, I don't even need that adjusted for inflation. If he's an alcoholic, it's not enough. Okay, enough, it's not. Yeah. Period. Like,
and so he did. He worked about one more month at the post office until it hit 1970, and then he quit. But then he stayed out of contact with John for like another month, and John got very worried. There wasn't a way for him to find Bukowski. He only knew how to find the bastard at the post office, but now that he was gone, who knows where he wound up. As soon as February hit, Charles Bukowski got in touch with John Martin and presented him with his first novel, Post Office. John was surprised. He asked him, how could you write a novel in just a few weeks? And Bukowski responded, fear.
Yeah. I mean, fuck. Was it good?
Oh, the book?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still a piece of shit, but
fear.
Over the course of editing the novel for the next several months, the book finally released in 1971. It detailed Charles Bukowski's life.
Just a little bit of editing.
There's a lot of puke on this.
Okay, we're going to need you to rewrite these pages. I was not able to salvage them after peeling them apart.
What was wrong with flippity floppity? Did you mean a car? Yeah. It detailed Charles Bukowski's life from 1952 until his retirement in 1970, all dealing with his experiences working for the post office. But of course, the horrific and sometimes illegal things brought up in post office could be used as evidence against Bukowski. So instead of an autobiography, the novel was first seen as a fiction with the names changed. The main character would be known as Henry Chinaski.
Wait, didn't we have a word for that a while back?
Well, like an I novel?
Yeah, that was it, right?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
But, yeah. So he'd be known as Henry Chinaski, an alter ego that Bukowski would use throughout his life when talking about
it's
himself.
It's me, but not me.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
But in a legal sense, very much not me.
The first page of the book says, quote, "This is presented as a work of fiction and is dedicated to nobody," although the fiction part itself isn't necessarily true. And it's not like Bukowski was the only son of a bitch delivering mail out there. There were plenty of fucking weirdos working the post office. But it's funny to see how your mail at least used to get lost. For instance, Bukowski goes through a nice little picket fence to deliver the mail through the mail slot in this family's front door. But then he gets the feeling of something sticking up his ass. I want you to think about this for a moment as I cough. I looked around and there was a German Shepherd, full grown, with his nose halfway up my ass. With one snap of his jaws, he could rip off my balls. I decided that those people were not going to get their mail that day, and maybe never get any mail again.
That's fair, man.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
He just straight up said, no, fuck this family.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fuck you. You ever been attacked by a dog, Jordan? This shit is scary. It's not worth it. All right?
Oh, and I didn't have it written down.
Especially a German Shepherd. God.
Yeah. Well, don't piss it off.
People are fucking worried about pit bulls. Horse shit. German Shepherds, dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're scary. I had one. Oh, God, I loved her.
Yeah, you
Terrible
did.
Dog.
You know why? Because she knew you.
Yeah.
All right?
Oh, she was great. She was a good little escort for people who would visit because she would sit down directly in front of you.
Excuse me, I forgot the other meaning for that word. Proceed.
Well, you'd come over and you'd sit down on the couch, and then she'd sit down in front of you, and you weren't allowed to get up unless she told you it was time to leave, in which case she would put your hand in her mouth, and then she would grip it just hard enough to pull you, and she would walk you to the front door and say, okay, your 10 minutes is up, it's time for you to leave.
Okay, and you're arguing for it being fucked up that he doesn't want to deliver mail to this house right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice dog. It's very cute. I thought it was cute when she did it.
Okay. All right. Wow.
Don't let the teeth bother you.
Oh, you're whiteness right now, man.
I bite too. By the way, I didn't put it down in here, but yeah, I had you describe your balls. So if you ever asked like why why ladies were, for some reason, still dating Charles Bukowski. Apparently, he had massive fucking balls. Like, his balls were big.
Okay.
And he took that as a source of pride. Like, even from when he was a kid, like...
You think that's why he was dating women? You think that's it?
No. I'm just saying, like, that's why they were sticking around. Because the balls were fun to play with.
They weren't really sticking
around.
Balls
have always been fun for women to play with. It's why they stick around. They get great sense of joy out of the balls.
Okay. Even though pee is stored in them?
I mean, they deflate once you're done going potty. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And actually, sorting the mail was a different beast altogether. You had to absent-mindedly look at the address on the envelope or package and be able to toss the mail in the right numbered bin with a high degree of precision. Like, you'd get tested once a month and heavily scrutinized if you weren't throwing with like a 95% accuracy. And Bukowski was constantly getting written up for not being able to get it right. But he found a way for himself to memorize the streets. He would make up dirty stories about the street names as if they were people, like... Burnside sticks it in with Barnes while 23 lovers fuck Mrs. Vaughn. Shit like that, you know? So you'd know the connecting streets. Well, mindlessly, Bukowski is smoking a cigar and sorting mail one day, which was allowed back then, and some of his cigar ashes falls into a bin and catches the whole thing on fire. From then on, only front desk clerks...
Drive away quickly.
Only front desk clerks were allowed to smoke in the post office on a national level. All the other workers had to go on break room to smoke. And that was all because Charles Bukowski. He was very proud of that fact.
Ooh, making friends.
True. Yeah. As mentioned before, Bukowski got written up all the fucking time. Not just for his poor sorting, but lots of shit. But he used the fact that he was friends with his black coworkers to threaten his higher-ups and get out of trouble.
What?
Yeah, like
Explain.
he wouldn't say anything too bad, but he'd be like, you know, I'm friends with the blacks, right? And they'd be like...
He wouldn't say anything too bad.
Yeah, well, you know, and they're like, all right, consider this a warning then, basically. You know, when the Watts riots erupted in 1965 in L.A., a voice came over the intercom at the post office allowing all black employees to leave if they lived in certain areas of town because the riots were starting to grow into those neighborhoods, and they knew the black workers' lives may be at stake if they got caught outside at night.
What was that?
The Watts riots?
See.
Basically, if I understand it correctly, it was kind of like the Rodney King thing where, like, basically the cops pulled somebody over, a black guy, and he was getting arrested, but they roughed him up a bit.
No,
and there was people watching it happen.
They were just kind of cops about it.
Yeah, there were cops about it. And then when other people were trying to say, like, hey, maybe don't hit him in the face with a baton, they started hitting other people in the faces with batons. But as
they do.
Yeah. And basically what happened though was like the way
that only pieces of shit end up taking that job. It's just I don't understand the
I mean, yeah, I mean, you were asking before
the
about
reputation that they have. I mean, you'd think it would only be like upstanding citizens that would take that position in society.
Well, before you were asking, like, do abusers hit their wives or their kids first? And the timeline of events is usually they become a cop and then they...
and then, yeah.
Yeah. No, so, like, if I remember this right, so there was basically, like, the church leaders and stuff in the black communities were trying to calm people down, and meanwhile the police were like... They were like, there are black people out there trying to incite riots and shit, and which was of course scaring all the white people. And so it was that whole thing of basically like the riot taking place in the black neighborhoods because all the white people went over there and just started fucking shit up. Oh. And the police were like basically saying, I think the quote was something like they called
helped, right? They helped the community, right? They went in because that's their job, because they taxed them to be a service.
No, they called the black people like the Viet Cong or something. They're like bunch of guerrilla warfares out there. You know? They were like, whoa! They were like, they're out, they're trying to, you know, and it was like, whoa.
Like, Jesus fuck.
Just nobody wants to get punched in the face. Like that's So yeah. So as this shit was going on, and it was a huge thing, like LA's on fire a lot. Well, this was one of the times. And so basically, Bukowski, though, I mean, he's a low level piece of shit. He doesn't get paid well. because he's a bad worker. So he's living like in one of those, like, if I remember, he was basically on the line of the black and white neighborhoods at the time, because basically he was too poor to live in a white neighborhood, but he was also like not black. So he had to be on the line. And when I saw like an interview with one of his ex-wives or something, she was like, yeah, like you're on the fucking line all the fucking time, because like that's where everyone is clashing. You were on the front lines of every fucking riot that happened, and our house was right fucking there. You know, so well, Bukowski lived in one of those neighborhoods, and although he's very obviously white, he decides to leave anyway. And he's grabbing his shit out of his locker.
Wonder why.
And well, they said only the black guys can leave, basically.
Still, well,
yeah, I know, but he's
like, no, I'm not fucking staying here.
And he's grabbing his shit out of his locker, and one of his supervisors was like, "Why are you going? You're not." Bukowski just spins around on the guy. He's like, "I'm not what, whitey?"
No, dude, no.
And although Bukowski changed all the names of the people he worked with in his book Post Office, Bukowski writes about his daughter using her real name, the only time he does so, but not a whole lot. As a matter of fact, here, I'm going to read you the entire chapter about his daughter. Marina Louise, Faye named the child. Faye in this instance is Frances Dean, her mother. So there it was, Marina Louise Chinaski, in the crib by the window, looking up at the tree leaves and bright designs whirling on the ceiling. Then she'd cry, walk the baby, talk to the baby. The girl wanted Mama's breast, but Mama wasn't always ready, and I didn't have Mama's breast, and the job was still there, and now riots. 1/10 of the city was on fire. That was it. That was the whole chapter. That's the only time he talks about her.
That's not a chapter. It's like 2 sentences.
Yeah, well, he considered it good enough.
Oh.
The final part of the book is about Bukowski partying with some trans people and trying to decide who will suck each other off. And when he wakes up is when he begins writing this very novel. Quote,
questions.
In the morning, it was morning, and I was still alive. Maybe I'll write a novel, I thought, and then I did. It's a good ending.
Yeah.
Post Office was an incredible hit. The guy's an anti-hero, and he knows it. There were a lot of writers talking about their drug addiction, but it wasn't nearly as common as how many drinkers are out there. And Bukowski was the king of the drunks. The stories in Post Office are funny, but Jesus Christ, is this man problematic. Still, people were very, very fucking interested. The success of Post Office was able to put Black Sparrow Press on the map, and John Martin was even able to buy his D.H. Lawrence collection back. In gratitude for putting so much faith in him, Bukowski would publish almost all of his works through Black Sparrow Press for the rest of his life. And launching his career made Bukowski a literary hero amongst the literary elite in L.A. Shit, he even got a small documentary made about him in 1973, with just that one book under his belt. And of course, the fame and success would mesh horribly with someone as bad of a person as Bukowski. He had a number of affairs while in a relationship with poet and sculptor Linda King. She was about 30 at the time, while Bukowski was 50. And they were constantly breaking up. They had apparently met at a party, and Linda asked Charles if she could make a sculpting of his head. She later gave him the bust, and every time they broke up, Charles would give the head back to her. And then when they were together, he'd take the head back. I find it funny that the only thing he wouldn't toss around and break is a fucking image of himself. And it would be kind of cute, except for the fact that they were pretty violent with each other. On one occasion, Linda threw a typewriter at Bukowski's head, which might have killed him had it struck. And Charles had, on at least one occasion, broken Linda's nose. I have seen a photo of them where they're all smiles and she's got 2 black eyes.
Well, weird. Usually people from families like that don't end up that way. But
weird, huh? Yeah. Well, despite this, they stuck together for about 5 years. According to her, quote, "It wasn't that he had other women. It's that he always wanted me to know about them. Always wanted to tell me all the details about what they did together."
Look, I had one rule.
Dude, I remember seeing like I saw one of these interviews with them, and like, so they're both just chillaxing on a couch. There's an interviewer in front of them, you know, asking questions. He's of course got a drink in one hand, and he's got like both arms around the fucking couch, like he's king shit, you know. And she's just like, you know, I don't have to put up with your fucking shit, because he's giving her shit, I'm sure, at some point. And he's just like, Oh, you better, because you know what I'll do? I'll get my Jew lawyer, and he's gonna take everything away from you. Yeah, and for some reason, like he didn't see that as any kind of insult. He literally thought that like mentioning that your lawyer was Jewish was like, oh no, it's a good lawyer, you know. Like, and so he was like, you better be careful,
sir.
And so she was just like, I don't give a shit. And so then he just goes, you piece of shit. And he puts his legs up and he starts kicking at her on the couch like a child throwing a tantrum.
Well, no, that's the stance. How do you fight?
Yeah, but he's like on his back with his fucking like arms around the chair and he's just like, you fucking bitch, you know, and he's like kicking his legs at her and he's so trashed. And the interviewer's just like he's not saying a thing. And she's just like, fuck you, you know, and he's just like, you bitch, you stupid bitch. And it's like, fuck, dude. Like,
oh, I can't wait for homework.
God. Hey, at least his balls are big. Although Bukowski would publish his novels through Black...
as written. Have you seen any pictures of said balls?
Of his balls?
Yeah.
God damn, I'm sure they're out there. I don't know.
Pictures? I mean, you really think that anybody like that wouldn't have taken pictures of the balls if they were indeed that big? You don't think it would be floating around? I feel like it would.
Well, okay, here's the thing. To be fair, like I do believe him on this point because... I'll get into it a bit later, but he didn't particularly lie too much. He was obviously an embellisher, but he was honest about when he was a piece of shit. And he mentioned like he doesn't have much of a cock. Like it's not good, you know, but he does have big balls. And oh, actually, I did watch an interview where somebody, like one of his ex-wives was like, yep, balls were big.
Okay.
I don't know, man. I'm willing to believe him.
I mean, there's too many variables there, though. I mean, like, her experiences with balls will shape her perspective on whether or not those balls
was he
are
crossing
big.
his legs all the time as he's standing up to make
No, just like what kind of
something?
exposure to balls she had before then. What's she thinking? You know, what
fair,
to her
fair.
is big balls? We need to find out what the average opinion of what a big ball sack is.
I don't want to find that out.
Like, just one woman saying that he has a big ball sack doesn't mean he has a big ball sack, Jordan.
I don't want to find out what the average is of that because now I'm going to
She might have just seen small balls beforehand, and then this is just an average ball sack.
I'm going to be even sadder because I'm like, okay, well, not only do I have a small wiener, but now my balls are small too. Like, I don't want that.
Be a bummer.
I'm practically a woman. Now, although...
Oh, yeah. Oh, nope, not doing that here. Go on, proceed.
Although Bukowski would publish his novels through Black Sparrow Press, his poetry was still up for grabs. So starting in 1972, his first collection was released by City Lights Publishers, a book called Erections, Ejaculations, Exhibitions, and General Tales of Ordinary Madness. City Lights would release one other book of his in 1983 called The Most Beautiful Woman in Town and Other Stories. I'm not going to go into his poetry because they're just short lines that sounds exactly like his short stories and novels, so I'm just going to focus on the novels anyway. Like, he just breaks them up line by line like, hey, that's poetry, and it's like, it just reads like a short story.
Okay.
But besides those two books of poetry, Bukowski would pretty much continue publishing through Black Sparrow exclusively. In 1973, the follow-up to Post Office would be a series of short stories by Bukowski. Some were factual, like his tale of dealing with his hemorrhoids called All the Assholes in the World and Mine. But some, like Maha Thurup.
Yep, alcoholic.
Yep. A tale about a man in South America with the largest dick in the world is fake. And
Weird.
Maybe. We don't know if there isn't. Is that John coming on a canoe? No, wait. In 1975, Bukowski came out with his second novel. Shut up.
It's dumb. I'm sorry.
It's fantastic. Bukowski came out with his second novel, a prequel to Post Office and again published by Black Sparrow Press called Factotum. It again stars Bukowski himself as Henry Chinaski, detailing his time trying to find a job in L.A. between getting kicked out of the house by his father and finding work at the post office. It again was a huge success. And for all of Bukowski's well-known philandering behind the scenes, he finally met a woman that could stand him in 1976, Linda Lee Bale. She was an aspiring actress, a groupie, and the owner of a health food restaurant. And for some reason, they got along great. To Bukowski, he said it was because he could feel that she actually cared about him. And I guess that was enough. They moved in together, and in 1985, they were married by Canadian mystic Manly P. Hall.
Canadian mystic.
Yeah. Like, maybe the syrup is supernatural.
And his name was Manly P.
Manly pea hall. It's a hall of manly peas.
All right.
Of course, their relationship wasn't the best either, but it was doable. In 1978, from Black Sparrow Press, Bukowski released his third novel titled Women. It is, again, about Henry Chinaski dealing with his alcoholism while being a successful writer. And of course, it's about his multiple affairs. Now, while some of these stories can be humorous, it's important to point out that I personally don't know what to believe when it comes to Charles Bukowski's point of view of events. He's never the good guy in his stories, and for that, you would think maybe he's being honest. But he also kind of seems like the guy who's absolutely full of shit. And I will say, there have been interviews with people he worked with at the post office who have verified everything he says is fact.
Well, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, like, if he's fucking alcoholic, then, like, you can't really trust him.
I will say that the series of events probably are factual, but
being an alcoholic does make you fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah, he's also admitted, though, that he makes himself tougher than he really is. Like, I'm sure the series of events are true, but, you know, him just being like, why don't you stick it in your eye, motherfucker? Like, he probably mumbled something, got his ass kicked, and pooped his pants.
He mumbled something weird and started kicking his legs on the couch. I don't fucking know. Like, yeah. He's a fucking alcoholic. Like,
I was so amazed when I saw that, though. I've never seen somebody do that and not, like, I don't know. Like, I've never passed a child doing that.
Just a fucking middle-aged ass man.
Just yeah, it was weird. It was. Yeah. I was a little scared. I was like, oh.
That's the tactic. It's genius.
Well, I make this distinction.
It's fear.
I make this distinction, though, about whether or not to believe him, because he writes about a small rendezvous in post office.
No, I'm not saying he's lying.
No, I am, though.
Lying, lying as in, like, he's intentionally distorting the truth. I'm just saying maybe his idea of, like, what the fuck was actually going on isn't true.
So here's the thing, and this is the thing that really bothers me. I would like to see him as an anti-hero besides just a straight-up villain, because he writes about a small rendezvous in post office that was not quite clear if he raped someone.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was a crazy lady, and she seemed a little playful, but in the end, it didn't seem totally consensual the way they wrote about it. In Women, he straight up says he gave anal to someone who didn't want it, and he fucked chicks when they were passed out. Now, here's the thing. Back in 1978, the way he explains these events, people would have seen this kind of behavior as either a pimpin' thing to do or just plain funny. Like the way he explains it. Like, oh, you know, they're like, don't put it in my butt. And I'd put it in her butt. You know
how it is when they don't want it in their ass.
Yeah. Now, I looked it up extensively, and I never found a single allegation of rape against him. Like, you would think somebody, even fellow alcoholics, might come out and say something.
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, you were saying, like, back in the day, that was more of, like, a standard thing, so why would it be documented as well?
I don't know. I was looking for anything, one person, because he for sure has had, like, dozens of flings, but it just, I don't know. So it could be that he made up these stories as some attempt at humor, or no one ever came forward, and we'll unfortunately probably never know.
Well,
I know. Honestly, I wish he were still alive today to see how things have not swung in that direction, so that it's like, so Charles, you ever rape anyone? And he's just like, actually, that was made up. I thought it was funny, and that was ill-advised. You know, like, I mean, wouldn't a publisher have even come up and been like, hey, crimes, huh? You know, like, I don't know.
Hey, consent.
Yeah. Like, nobody, I don't know. Back then, I see people reading that shit and just thinking it's funny. You know, like people who today own Harley Davidsons, you know,
what?
I don't know. I see those as both the same kind of people that, you know, find that kind of humor
funny.
Think
anybody on a Harley Davidson thinks rape jokes are funny?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, we can test this. Okay.
Now, of course, it wasn't just his relationships that Bukowski had issues with. It was people in general. His live readings were something to behold, because he would get into frequent arguments with the audience. Because what do you know? A drunk author attracts drunks. So I've seen videos online where people just start heckling his poetry. And even though he's an old fucking man, he just takes off his glasses, tells people in the crowd to fight him. And because he'd get so fucking upsetty spaghetti, his readings would sometimes last about half an hour before he told the audience to go fuck themselves and storm out, even though he may have been scheduled for an hour or 2 hours even. And it may be obvious to say, But he was drinking full bottles of wine and beer during his live readings as well. He'd be fucking trashed very early in. I mean it. Like, he would, like, it would be a constant thing. Like, one drunk would, like, heckle, and he'd tell him, like, I'll kick your fucking ass. And people would clap because, you know, somebody got Charles Bukowski upset, except the dude in the audience would also be upset because everyone cheered Charles and not him. And so then, like, it would last, like, another 5 minutes of him doing poetry, and then the guy would come up again and be like, yeah, fuck you, man. And be like, you know, you got a fucking problem here. And like, and it would just get very fucking awkward.
Yeah, like, yeah, I'll fucking come up and possibly kill Charles Bukowski, the old alcoholic man, on stage in front of all these people right now.
Apparently to the day he died, he was a fairly okay fighter. Because not everyone knew what Charles Bukowski looked like. And he, of course, is running his mouth in a fucking bar. So yeah, he got into bar fights. But Bukowski... he wasn't unbearable to everyone. Oddly enough, indie cartoonist R. Crumb collaborated with Bukowski on a number of occasions throughout the 80s. And this kind of makes sense to me because R. Crumb himself is an extremely standoffish guy. In 1982, Bukowski would release his fourth novel, Ham on Rye, about his, or rather Henry Chinaski's, experiences growing up. This is where I got a lot of information from the beginning of this episode. Not the parts that are potentially fake, but the parts that are verified through sources other than himself, like good old-fashioned, you know, daddy-ass kickings. In 1987, a Hollywood movie based on some of the writings of Charles Bukowski called Barfly was getting made. Charles Bukowski penned the script and insisted that Sean Penn play the role of himself, or as Henry Chinaski in this instance, which I think is funny because Sean Penn is a very known asshole as well. Like, didn't he beat Madonna half to death with a baseball bat?
I don't fucking know, man.
Well, Sean Penn agreed under the condition that his good friend Dennis Hopper direct, but Bukowski...
Wait, with a baseball bat?
Oh, yeah. Oh, he fucked her up, dude. Like,
and he's just out walking around doing stuff?
Yeah. He's actually making a great comeback.
He just attacked someone with a baseball bat and then just went on with his life?
You think Chris Brown is out there just not making records? Yeah.
Bat? Bat, though.
With a bat, yeah.
That's a whole thing. That's a whole nother level.
Oh, right? Yeah, no, that is attempted murder.
Like, I mean, you ever been hit by a grown man? Sucks. You ever been hit by a bat? I haven't. No, I don't want to find out. Like, fucking A.
Hit each other with bats and see what it's like?
Like wiffle bats?
That would hurt too, god damn it.
It would sting. It'd be kind of fun.
Sting. It'd be slap. Ah! God, fuck.
Wiffle bat fight later. What? We both make okay money. I knock out one of your teeth, I'll pay for it, and ditto. Come on.
I'm going to travel tomorrow. I don't want to do that.
And how much goofier would it be if you were missing one of your front teeth? It'd be a vacation to remember. Think about all the fucking fun little photo shoots you'd have.
So Sean Penn wants his friend Dennis Hopper to direct, but Bukowski doesn't like Hopper. It's not that he ever met the guy, but he thought Dennis Hopper was a, quote, gold chain wearing Hollywood phony. Basically, Bukowski loved LA, but he loved it because it's a shithole. He thought Dennis Hopper glamorized Hollywood too much, and he hated that. It actually kind of feels a bit like how Portlanders are proud of Portland, you know? Like, yeah, I love it. It's a piece of shit. Fuck hipsters, you know?
Yeah.
So the film was set to be directed by Barbet Schroeder instead, with Mickey Rourke playing Henry Chinaski and Faye Dunaway as Wanda, who in this instance was actually a stand-in for Jane Cooney Baker, the old woman he was crazy about that hotel hopped around town. While filming, an apartment had been selected as Wanda's home, just a random location. Charles Bukowski was on set and was like, holy shit, this is the actual apartment she lived in. They were like, really? Did you pick this place? He was like, no, I totally forgot about this. So that was a neat little coincidence. And the movie got some pretty good reviews and was even nominated for the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival.
The Palme de fucking what?
The Palme d'Or. It's Best Picture at French-Canadian Oscars.
French-Canadian Oscars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cannes Film Festival.
Oh.
Cannes Film Festival or something.
All right.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah. Proceed.
But Bukowski still walked away from the experience saying Sean Penn had put too much Hollywood glamour in his acting. Bukowski detailed his experiences in his 1989 novel Hollywood. Around this time, he came down with a bout of tuberculosis that would cause him to abandon drinking altogether.
Whoa.
That had to have been a fucking life-changing time for him. For
That's
sure.
Pretty gnarly.
There are colors? His sixth...
I'm feeling
His sixth and final novel was the only one based completely on fiction, released in 1994, titled Pulp. He began writing the novel in 1991, but in 93 fell ill once again. The novel was not yet completed, but sensing the end, hurried to finish it before his death. It's about a private investigator named Nikki Belaine, who's working 3 different cases. One is a woman who calls herself Lady Death, looking for a red sparrow. Another is a man trying to find out if his wife is cheating. And the last case is of a woman trying to find out if this one guy is really who he says he is, or a doppelganger. Well, the book, of course, ends with the 3 cases converging into one. Turns out that the man under suspicion of being a doppelganger really is a doppelganger. In fact, he's an alien trying to cheat on his alien wife by pretending to be human. And it turns out that he's fucking that one other guy's wife, the one who's, trying to find out if she's cheating or not. And finally, the red sparrow that Lady Death is looking for ended up being a warning of his impending death. Lady Death really was Lady Death. Overall, it was a pretty fun novel, actually. I liked it. On March 9th, 1994, Heinrich Karl Bukowski, otherwise known as Charles Bukowski, passed away in his San Pedro home aged 73 from leukemia. His last few years alive were documented in the book illustrated by R. Crumb called The Captain is Out to Lunch and the Sailors Have Taken Over the Ship. His last years were filled with feeding his 9 cats and watching his wife Linda nurse her hangovers. He was buried at Green Hills Memorial Park in Rancho Palos Verdes, California. His service was conducted by Buddhist monks, although he was a lifelong agnostic. His gravestone has an engraving of a caricature, a man with his dukes up, since Bukowski was a known fighter, and 2 words immortalized by his advice to young writers. Don't try.
Nice. Fuck it. Yes.
When he died, the New York Times published a picture of Mickey Rourke playing Henry Chinaski in Barfly as Charles Bukowski's picture in his obituary. Ouch. Though, his face was so fucking pockmarked from his early days at Acne, he looks like a fucking war criminal. Like, he got shrapnel to the face. A dude's
Why would... Do you mean like a prisoner of war? Why do you think... No, war criminal is like higher up that orders fucked up shit. That's not an apt
you're fair.
description.
You think that the grunts aren't committing war crimes?
It's not the same.
It looks like a Bond villain, I would say, either way.
Right,
He's got the pockmarked face. Well, not even 10 years after his death, Black Sparrow Press, which was set up specifically to publish Bukowski's works, closed its store in 2003, where all editions of Bukowski's work were bought and stored at Western Michigan University. The rest of his literary archives were donated to the Huntington Library in San Marino by Linda. The rights to his works are now with Eco Press, a subsidiary to HarperCollins. In 2005, a film starring Matt Dillon and directed by Brent Hamer, based on Factotum, was released to generally favorable reviews. And unfortunately, like what happens to some writers, Charles Bukowski has had more books published in his death rather than in his life. A large part of this is because he wrote a lot of poetry before he moved over to writing short stories and fiction, and at the time, he sold pages of work to whoever would basically pay for his next bottle. So all these publishers have something by him, and they all release a new, quote-unquote, new collection by Bukowski, what feels like every few years, and it's always the same stuff. Some publishers have even tried to release them as new by editing the poems into something else entirely, so they won't flow the way he intended them to, but hey, what's a quick buck when you're pissing in the face of an American great? While he was alive, Charles Bukowski was not super popular in America, but he was infamous everywhere else in the world. This sometimes led to publishers being not convinced that he would be a bestseller. Luckily for him, he had Black Sparrow Press, but this ended up not being the case once he passed. Sure, he was a hot commodity in the literary LA scene before he died, but after his passing, Charles Bukowski became the anti-hero for a whole new generation that knows that working is bullshit and we're all just trying to earn that paycheck for our next fix. And I'm sure he would have loved that. My sources today: The Wives and Girlfriends of Charles Bukowski by Paul Goodman, Allocation.com, July 15th, 2021. A Conversation with John Martin by Jacob Udi. Jacob Udi.
There you go.
Not Booty.
Better.
Poetry.
Jacob Booty.
Jacob Booty. Poetry, poetrynw.org. July 13th, 2020. Post Office by Charles Bukowski, First Echo edition 2002. Ham on Rye by Charles Bukowski, Echo 2014. Pulp by Charles Bukowski, First Echo edition 2002. And Wikipedia. Now describe your balls.
I already did.
So what was it before, though, that made you go, when you heard the name? You heard what did you know? Like, what?
Nothing.
No?
It's nothing. Don't worry about it. It's not
pertinent?
Pertinent, yes. That is the word.
I know the word, but I don't know what it means,
hand.
so I don't know if that was even correct in what you said.
It don't matter right now.
It might.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, and I know that that's something that, I've seen on, some old ancient Tumblr post or something, is, somebody quoting Charles Bukowski is people love to dance in the rain, but they're afraid to get in the bathtub in their clothes or something. And somebody was like, that's fucking stupid, Bukowski. Oh, why do people say they're hungry, but if I throw an apple at their face, they fucking duck? Fuck you, And I mean, truly, the guy was just he really was kind of a monster. Had he not written anything?
No. I don't know what the fuck you would... Dude, everybody that we do on this fucking podcast, and you're going to call this guy a fucking monster? This is just a regular-assed dude compared to the majority of people we've covered. Are you fucking kidding me?
Why do you feel
the Marquis de Sade?
Why do you feel like...
Shut the fuck up. You know that's not what I meant. That is not what I meant. And also, by the way, fuck you for doing Anne Frank at all. You fucking dick.
That was good information. Man, that was a really sour 2 weeks.
Marquis de Sade, H.P. Lovecraft.
H.P. Lovecraft was not that bad of a guy. He was
the fuck are you talking about? He was racist even for the time.
Yeah, but he didn't do
He went out of his way. You were like, racist? Yeah, but that's what everybody was like back then. What do you name his cat? No,
what I mean is that he didn't go out and beat anybody up over it.
Because he fucking couldn't.
Yeah, he was weak.
Exactly. Charles Bukowski was just a fucking... It sounds like he was just a fucking shit drunk, but an amazing writer.
Yeah, he's just an abuser, possible rapist.
Yeah, I mean, possibly... No, it doesn't sound... We went over the rapey bits, and it didn't sound like it was...
Maybe. I don't fucking know. Look, he's a bad guy. Right, he is a bad guy. That's all I'm saying. He is a bad guy.
Okay, but on a fucking list out of everybody we've gone over, pretty, pretty fucking low down there.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All I'm saying is that if he hadn't written anything, then he's just that one fucking asshole at a bar that goes home and beats his wife. It's still.
If he hadn't written anything, that asshole wouldn't have had a wife.
Ooh, fair. Well, I don't know. He did have one wife before.
He just would have been that one sad regular that frequents that one bar. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, the crab bowl is now defunct. Actually, it's
no. This applies to any bar.
It applies to some bars more specifically than others.
Every fucking Boonie dive bar.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think this guy's really fucking up there comparatively speaking to anybody else we've gone over.
No. But I mean, he's just, I don't know. I'm just looking back on him as I really hate these people. Am I related to mostly these people? Yeah. But either way, hey everyone, we're about to take a month-long break. I need to catch up. Yeah, this is our 10th author
couldn't have happened when I was
3.
moving or anything. No, we're just gonna have to work around fucking Jordan's vacation schedule here, and Caleb's just gonna have to find a way in his fucked up weird ass life to get over here to record. All right, that's fucking fine. Yeah, all by myself.
So Caleb's going to continue publishing episodes about whatever. Essentially, this is going to, once we start, this is actually going to mark the 1 year anniversary of us starting this shit.
It's only been a year?
It's only been a year.
Wow.
I would have figured that you would have said, wow, how the time has, flown by. But no, only been a year.
Yeah.
Feels like eternity.
It's just,
God, I hate you.
I just don't understand how time can pass so slow when I'm miserable, but the years can fly by so quickly.
Well, only time flies by when you're having fun. So the fact that you're miserable, it feels like purgatory.
Okay, all right.
Do you have anything to say as last
break?
Words?
Last month, before the month break, Jordan?
Before something unfortunate happens.
No, fuck you. You can't take me.
To what?
What?
I'm going to sell your body to the streets.